Well, the day is finally here. The Flash has officially hit theaters, and oh boy, has the road to this one been long, to say the least. I don't really feel like getting into all the terrible stuff Ezra Miller did. It's insane to me that the studio and everyone involved are just totally on board with keeping them on for more movies, when most other actors would have been out on the street for just one of their offenses. But nonetheless, it's insane that the Flash movie is actually here. And was it worth the wait?
And I've got to say, in all honesty, it's the biggest piece of dog shit.
The Flash is a disaster from beginning to end, and while I don't think it's the worst DC movie, it shows that Warner Brothers has clearly not learned their lesson from their previous outings, and it honestly serves as a perfect metaphor and a perfect finale for this string of DC movies. I see so many similarities between this film and the theatrical cut of Justice League. Both are incredibly ugly to look at CGI catastrophes that are being single-handedly held together by used band-aids as studio-mandated reshoots and rewrites plague a cut-together cash grab. Sure, there were some things about The Flash that I enjoyed. Keaton is good, some of the jokes are funny, and the film does have some kind of emotional core at the center, which many other films from this genre don't typically have. But even that gets muddled up when you realize we're supposed to feel any kind of emotion other than annoyance for the person who hasn't even been allowed to do press for their own movie. I'm going to come right out and say it. I don't understand why DC is so gung-ho to keep Miller on as the Flash. They're not good as the character, and they have easily been the worst part of every film they've appeared in. The only time they were remotely engaging was the final scene in Zack Snyder's Justice League. But what makes Miller worse here is that he has to play two versions of the character, and both of them are equally annoying, yet somehow they're both annoying for their own uniquely annoying reasons.
My face. You stole my face.
Now, say what you will about the CW Flash and the Arrowverse in general, but the one consistently great part was Grant Gustin. He's the best person to play the character, and it truly boggles the mind that DC is making no attempt to utilize him more now that the show is over, and I'm assuming he has a little bit more free time on his hands.
I spent a lifetime trying to right the wrongs of the past, as if fighting crime would bring my parents back.
The rest of the cast is fine here. Keaton is clearly having a good time being back as Batman, and he's the closest this movie comes to being enjoyable whatsoever. Sasha Calle, who I'm hoping I'm pronouncing her name correctly, is clearly trying to have some kind of character as Supergirl, but she's barely in the movie, and come the third act serves little to no purpose other than just a plot point. But she's barely in the movie as well, so there's really nothing worthwhile to her, unfortunately. Affleck and Shannon clearly just want to go home, Michael Shannon in particular, and you might think I'm trying to be funny here, but no, Michael Shannon literally just didn't want to be there.
Wow, this has just been such a pleasure. I'm such a lucky boy. I can't wait to go home.
But let's talk about the elephant in the room, the one thing that will make or break the movie for many, and it's certainly the thing that tipped this to the scales towards it being one of the worst films I've seen so far this year, and that's the fan service. Now, I'm not going to deny that I'm a sucker for the multiverse movies. Yeah, it's cool seeing other worlds and other versions of characters and having actors come back to play those parts. The Arrowverse has done a surprisingly good job at that, and I of course love Spider-Verse, both films, but The Flash encapsulates every worry that people have with a concept like the multiverse. And to talk about that, I have to go into spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie, which judging by the box office, you probably didn't, skip the time code, and if you really want to know what happens, in 3, 2, 1, Tarkin. So the visual effects in this movie are pretty horrendous at points. It's not all terrible, but the green screen work is pretty terrible. And the third act is an absolute mess. It hurts your eyes to look at half the time. I saw this movie at a drive-in and I was about maybe a mile away from the screen, and even still it was making me sick to look at the final hour of this movie. I saw this clip going around on Twitter and thought, it can't all be this bad, but it is. It's really that bad, and it's during this sequence we get the big fan service moment. And this was the part I officially gave up on the movie and nearly went home. So, The Flash gets a glimpse into the multiverse during the big final battle with the big CGI whatever, and in said multiverse we see some characters from other DC films, and one of them is a CGI Christopher Reeves from the 1978 Superman movies. I could not believe my eyes. I nearly threw up on my lap. Not only is the effect horrendous, but it truly shows how disrespectful Warner Brothers as a company can be, that they would let something this ghoulish be released in theaters.
Am I really gonna defile this grave for money? Of course I am!
On top of that, they also resurrect his father and Adam West Batman. We also get glimpses at Nicolas Cage Superman, and for some reason Teddy Sears as Jay Garrick, even though he's not the real Jay Garrick. It's like they couldn't even be bothered to watch their own shows just to make sure anything lined up. And out of all the cameos you could have pulled from the Arrowverse, the fact that this was the only one you could muster is kind of hilarious. And what makes it even worse is that Muschietti revealed that he had complete free reign to use whatever DC characters he wanted for this scene, and yet he chooses these literal walking corpses and the two people not even most commonly associated with playing the characters they're representing. Here's a list of literally any other cameos you could have done that would have been better than this and probably would have gotten much better reactions from fans. The Flash is a nightmare. It's a movie that summarizes all the fears and concerns people have with movies like this. I can see some getting a kick out of this movie, and clearly there is an audience that is enjoying this movie, but I truthfully think that when this movie inevitably bombs, as it clearly has, it will finally wake studios up, or at least hopefully Warner Brothers, and show that movies like this cannot be released and cannot be made like this, especially in the condition. The reason Spider-Verse and the Batman and Guardians of the Galaxy 3 worked is the fact that they were given time to be polished and well thought out. And despite this movie being in production for nearly a decade, it's a rush mess that I fear may doom the DC universe for years to come.